Welcome to Orlando Magic Now with the Orlando Sentinel. I'm Charles King, here with the Magic Insider, Brian Schmitz, and we're going to talk about the Orlando Magic for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so here live on our website and go over the Magic's games from this past week and talk about the games coming up and about the play of some of the players thus far. So let's jump right into it with a pretty tough week, Brian, for the Magic. We knew that this schedule was going to be really tough, but an 0-3 start, and it ends Sunday night with a pretty rough loss to the Bulls where the Magic were pretty lethargic.
Well, they went into Chicago, and they didn't really have much to offer. Scott Skiles was searching for anybody who could give them a lift. I think he went all the way down to the popcorn vendor, but he couldn't play either. So this is not surprising, this kind of start, because when the schedule came out, you looked at it and you went, ooh, there's a tough game, there's a tough game. And Skiles and the Magic admitted that. I was at a luncheon, and they were even briefing the boosters that prepare yourself for a slow start because we have 6 playoff teams that are coming at us right off the bat, and the team that didn't make the playoffs, oh, by the way, is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who some people picked to win the NBA championship this year,
right,
coached by Billy Donovan. So, it's a very tough start, and they'll see if they can manage to win a game or two because it lightens up considerably after this.
Did you sense a hangover in Sunday night's loss to the Bulls after double overtime loss to the Thunder?
Could have been. I mean, the players, to their credit, said that they're not thinking what happened, that double overtime loss to the Thunder, and that's good. That's a step. This happened last year. You know, they have 7 or 8 of their core guys back, so this is kind of a trend, and this is what Scott Skiles is up against, bucking these habits of not having focus, of just kind of lollygagging around, and it's really surprising because these are all young guys. This isn't a beaten down veteran team of 35-year-old guys. You would expect that they didn't want to have any gas, but they just kind of walked out in Chicago and just were in the dark. And Scott, if you've known anything about Scott Skiles, he's the same way as a coach as he was as a player. He's not going to put up with it. And Tobias Harris, Elfrid Payton, they started the game, but they were sitting right by him when they made their run at the Bulls toward the end of the game. So if you're playing well, you're going to play. If you're not, you're going to have a seat right by Scott.
You mentioned that they made that run. They trailed by 15 points with 7 minutes left and made that run with Napier, Aaron Gordon, Nicholson, Jason Smith were in the game. All right, so going back to the Oklahoma City game, that has to be, I mean, if you could separate yourself, if you're a Magic fan from that game, it was one of the best games maybe ever played in the new building.
Well, what you need is an old-timer here to sit here, a historian to tell you just how many games you've seen, because, you know, there's one guy here who was writing on cave walls, and it's me. So, yes, you know, after the game, I thought, other than the playoffs, you can't put that in you got to put it in a different box. But for a regular season game, to me, this was the greatest regular season game I've seen. Because Darrell Armstrong stole a ball at the end of a game. I don't know who they played, and that was the game winner. That was a great ending. Dwight Howard soared over Tim Duncan and beat San Antonio with an alley-oop dunk a few years ago, and that was a terrific ending. But this one was pure scrapbook. The Magic, obviously, they were not favored in this game. They're going against the heavyweights, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant. These are guys the Magic do not have, but they stood toe-to-toe with them. Victor Oladipo, who was struggling with his shot, hit 2 big buzzer beaters. And then, of course, the coup de grace was, and this is, I'm sure Scott Skiles is seeing this shot in his nightmares, is Russell Westbrook speeding down the court, Thunder down by 3, and he hits a running 38-foot bank shot. Ho-hum, game tied. And at that point, I think we all feared that the Magic were going to lose, and they did. Russell Westbrook could be his own franchise player. He just happens to share the stage with Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City. But this guy is he's right there with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and all the other assassins that I call them, cold-blooded guys who will their team to victory. But it was a terrific game. Just the setting, the fans were into it. They were standing up at the, throughout the first and second overtime. So it was great theater.
They had it all. Great dunks, buzzer beating threes, numerous
Absolutely.
late threes. So the Magic played phenomenally in the first three quarters. I think if you could see the Magic match what they did for the first three quarters in that Thunder game and do that consistently throughout the year, you're talking about that'd be a huge turnaround this team could make. But unfortunately, those three quarters kind of isolated from this past week.
Well, I mean, that's where Scott's trying to get to. That's the consistency. And frankly, he has young guys that are still learning the ropes, but guys like Nick Vucevic and Tobias Harris, this is their fifth season. They've been around, so they're not rookies, but you have to get some kind of consistent play. And it's tough because these guys, while they show you glimpses of greatness, they also have their warts. And whether that be taking bad shots, whether that be the offense coming to a halt, they're not passing the ball, they're not moving around like they did to get an advantage. And then defensively, I think Scott has got these guys turned a little bit on the defensive end. I think they're a lot better than they were under Jacques Vaughn. But offensively, I think that is going to be the bugaboo. That's where Scott's going to struggle because there's a lot of ill-fitted parts on the Magic. There's little guys who aren't great shooters. There's big guys who aren't terrific defensive players.
Yeah.
So somehow you've got to get a mix. And he's still feeling his way around. I mean, we really have a better scouting report about the Magic than Scott does. We've seen these guys 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
We know, but he's trying to see what makes them tick and where he can position them. And I think this is like a boxing match. It's kind of a feeling out process now.
Let's talk about just recapping this week, some positives and negatives about the week 0-3. Obviously, the negatives are that they're 0-3,
Yes.
and the first two games, losses to the Wizards and the Thunder, feel very similar to the past couple of years where they struggled down the stretch. 5-point lead with 2 minutes left against the Wizards, couldn't finish that one out, and then an 18-point fourth quarter lead against the Thunder. I mean, that's the biggest negative, right?
Well, the 18-point lead, that's a tough one now. The Wizards game, which was a season opener, there was 5-6 points separating the teams. And in the NBA, that's nothing. I mean, that's 2 trips down to court and the game's tied. The difference between the Magic and the Wizards and the Thunder is clear. Both teams have closers. They have all-stars. John Wall was the difference in the Wizards game. Came down, hit the floater. Magic couldn't match him. Couldn't find that right guy to make the shot. Oklahoma City, I mean, they come at you with a double jab of Westbrook and Durant. I mean, those guys, it's hard to match them, especially in crunch time because this is a team that's been to the playoffs. I mean, this is a team that has also been in the NBA Finals. So they know how to win, and that's what Scott's trying to get these guys, even though they don't have the talent yet, trying to get that mentality of how you have to raise your game when an elite opponent comes in, and you have to play the right way. A little mistake here, a little mistake there, it all adds up to a loss.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where this team is, and we'll have to see as the schedule lightens how they do against teams that are in their weight class.
Can we search for some positives in this 0-3 start?
Oh, absolutely.
They showed they could play with 3 of the better teams in the NBA. We're right there in all 3 of those games. And even, I think against the Thunder, even though they blew that fourth quarter lead in overtime, they showed some fight, went down early in both overtimes and fought back.
Well, absolutely. You don't come out to an 18-point lead by luck over the Thunder. I mean, they played as well as they could. They played over their heads, truthfully. And the one positive you can take away from that game is that Victor Oladipo hit 2 buzzer beaters, huge shots when they're looking for that guy. They don't have a go-to guy like a lot of the contenders do, where they can give the ball to the guy and go get us a basket. And Scott made reference to that the next day after the Thunder loss, jokingly. Billy Donovan has a luxury where he has 2 guys that you can run the same play over and over and over. And with Scott, he's searching. He's searching who's the guy tonight. Is it Evan Fournier? Is it Tobias Harris? Is it Nick Vucevic? Who is it? Raise your hand. So, that, and I think they are playing better defense. I think Scott is and it's tough. It's not going to happen overnight. It may take a half a season just to drill the habits, the bad habits out of these guys. But I think they are playing better defense. I think they have more of a concept of being in the right place at the right time, and then it's just all effort. Nick Vucevic has even shown some, he's not exactly the greatest defender, but he's in better position. He blocked a shot against Oklahoma City, against Chicago. So it's going to take a while. It's when you walk into this type of situation that Scott has walked into. I think training camp, he spent so much time on trying to get them to play the right way and try to get rid of those old habits.
So I think another thing about this 0-3 start is fan perception about the team. I think there's a feeling across town, any Magic fan, that this really needs to be the year that fans really want to see the turnaround this year. The 0-3 start, I think for the casual fan, despite the fact they're playing 3 very good opponents, I think the casual fan looks at 0-3 and says, here we go again. How do you feel like this 0-3 start impacts the psyche of the fans?
Well, I think the season ticket holders and the fans, that's two different kinds of groups to me. Now, if you're a season ticket holder, I don't know what else more you could ask for, especially that Oklahoma City game, where that was a terrific game, and they stood toe-to-toe with a contender and did a lot of good things, because last year when Oklahoma City came to town, they scored 79 points in the first half and totally blew these guys out of the water. Now, it's a regular season game, so you have to take it what it is, a regular season game. But, I think the casual person, they couldn't close, same old thing. And there's some truth to that too. But that's what they have to do. They have to get over this hump. And I don't think it's really going to happen until they change their roster again. I think somehow, some way, you have to get an impact player. We all know what happened in Orlando when they had Dwight Howard. We all know what happened in Orlando when they had Shaq and Penny. You have to have one of those guys. Especially in the playoffs. How do you get that guy? That's the tough part. That's the tough part because they tried to get that guy in the draft and came up a little short of getting the number 1 pick.
Nice pieces, but not the
decent
the
pieces,
guy.
yeah, but not a franchise player.
So maybe the silver lining for the Magic here with the 0-3 start, you look at some of the other teams they'll be contending with possibly to get into the playoffs or, up to 40 wins. The Bucks, the Hornets, the Nets, the Pacers, all 0-3 starts. The Sixers, the Celtics, also with some rough starts. So it's not like the Magic have, bottomed out in the standings. It's only been 1 week, but...
Well, here's what you want. You want to send all those teams a fruit basket. You want to pick them up at the airport because those are the teams that you have to beat.
Yeah.
If you want to sniff the playoff race, you have to beat Philadelphia all 4 times. They're the worst team in the league. You have to beat some of these teams in your weight class if you want to mount any kind of a playoff charge in March. They're not going to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're not going to beat very many teams in the Western Conference. So that's where you have to get your victories. But if you play poorly in the fourth quarter and don't make shots and turn the ball over, it doesn't matter who you play. You can get beat by the Sixers last year. So, but I think that's kind of where the focus is going to be, really on these teams that they have a chance to beat. And they're coming up, fans. They're coming up right after this murderer's row. You're going to see some of these basement dwellers, and maybe they'll get some wins.
The Magic do have 4 games this week, and we'll talk about each of those 4 games coming up in just a minute. But let's talk a little bit about Week 1 and what we saw Scott Skiles do with the rotation, the starting lineup, and the players that are receiving minutes, the players that are not receiving minutes at this point. I think a player I'd like to start with is Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier, because there was some uncertainty going into the year what Skiles was going to do with the starting rotation, and clearly in the first week he went small. Started Evan Fournier at the 3, Tobias Harris at the 4. And Fournier had some up and down performances. What's your assessment of the way he played and the decision to go with him?
Well, Skiles loves Evan Fournier because he's tough He's tougher than he looks. And he doesn't have the man bun anymore.
That's gone. Yeah,
I miss the samurai man bun. I thought that was pretty unique. So he's kind of got, just a regular cool haircut. But he can do so many things. This is a kid from France. He grew up playing European basketball where they move the ball, they play as a team. But he can shoot the three. He can dunk. He can drive the lane. I mean, he does a lot of things that Skiles likes. So he starts a small forward, and that's really the only change in the lineup from last season. And we knew it was going to be. Now, personally, I'm an Aaron Gordon guy. Now, he's not quite ready to get on the launch pad, obviously. That Scott doesn't trust him yet. But Aaron Gordon is the best defensive player on the team. He can guard anybody. I'd give him my wallet. I mean, really, this kid, he's 20 years old, and he'll be really terrific when he learns how to play basketball. Now, I say that not as a shot to him, but he's like a decathlete now.
Yeah.
He can jump out of the gym. He can do all these things that just you go, wow, he's a highlight. But just the basic things,
Though he has seemingly improved. I was really impressed that as poor of a free throw shooter as he was last year, he stepped up and hit 2 clutch free throws against the Thunder. He looks, and in Summer League, he showed some improvements in his jump shot. Whether or not that translates to real NBA games, we have yet to see. He hasn't taken a ton. But a lot of things that Gordon can do to help this team, but is playing less than 20 minutes a game so far. And got some run against the Bulls on Sunday and was part of that comeback. But you expect Gordon to gradually get more minutes, I guess, as you say, as he learns to play a little bit better.
I think Gordon's situation is he'll get more playing time if this offense, if the other guys can get more offense and shoot better, because he's not there offensively yet. So I think that's why Skiles goes with Fournier.
Yeah.
Fournier is a much better offensive player, and he should be. He's had 3 years in the league. But Gordon, I think Gordon's playing time is going to depend on how the offense do. Now, if these other guys, Victor, Elfrid, Tobias, and Vooch, if these guys can come with some numbers, then I think you can afford to put Aaron Gordon in because of his defense. But until then, I think he's probably going to come off the bench in that, which is a pretty good role. If you don't have energy one night, he's an Energizer bunny. I mean, this guy, he's fun to watch play, and I think maybe toward the end of the year you may see more of Gordon.
Speaking of limited minutes, talk about the rookie Mario Hezonja. Saw 25 minutes in the opener against Washington, but has seen his minutes decrease every game since. Only 14 minutes against the Thunder, a double overtime game, only 14 minutes. Played all the way down the stretch, surprisingly, in the opener. Did not play any down the stretch against Oklahoma City, and then only 5 minutes against Chicago on Sunday. What are your thoughts out of Hezonja? What have you seen out of him so far, and what do you expect in terms of minutes moving forward?
It's a rookie.
Yeah.
This is a rookie, and he played overseas. He played in Spain, and he's finding out that they don't have these kind of guys over there. They don't have a Russell Westbrook and a Kevin Durant. These guys are like aliens to him. But Hezonja played really well against Washington. I love him because he's fearless. He tied the game late with a 3 when they needed a basket, and he's got that face just like an accountant, or like a CPA. He's just droll. I mean, he looks like he has no emotion at all, but he really has something inside him that you can't teach, that he is not afraid of the moment. Now, right now he's getting overwhelmed athletically, because especially defensively, and that's where Skiles has the biggest issue with him. He's just not yet equipped to guard these guys. Now, perfect example for Hezonja to follow would be J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick came to the league from Duke, and he was all this and all that, but he had a rude awakening.
It took Redick maybe 3 years before he was
absolutely
ready.
And while
he was 22 when he
exactly, and he can shoot, but is at the other end. And what do you do when you don't have the ball? And then how do you guard some of these guys? JJ built his body up. He studied like crazy, and he made himself a very good NBA player. Now is a starter with the LA Clippers.
Do you see Hezonja working his way more and more into the rotation. I mean, Skiles maybe unfairly had a reputation in the past for not playing rookies as much. I know the fans want to see Hezonja play. What do you expect moving forward, or is it going to be a situational thing?
I think it's going to be situational, and if he comes in and hits some shots, he plays longer. The other night, because Wednesday in the opener, Skiles said, I was going to take him out, and then he made a fool out of me. He hit 2 threes, and so I had to pull the other guy back. But with Mario, he has to be better defensively. He's going to play for Scott Skiles.
Okay, so we've talked about the wing rotation a little bit. One quick question I want to talk to you or ask you about the front court rotation is Channing Frye disappeared from the rotation. 2 DMPs to start the season, played 9 minutes against Chicago Sunday. Though he doesn't have a huge contract, he does have the 3rd highest salary on this team for a guy who didn't play at all. Your thoughts on that and Skiles' decision not to play him?
Well, I don't think it's really surprising. I mean, Channing is a pick and pop player, and right now I think Scott wants more ball movement, wants more up and down, and that's really not Channing's game. Now, Channing, to his credit, came back in terrific shape, and he's a pro and he understands it. And against Chicago Sunday, he did finally get some run, but he's a pick and pop. He's really not a in the paint type player, although he's close to 7 feet tall. That's not really in his DNA. So I don't know. I think they're going to try to trade him. I think they're trying to trade him right now.
And I mean, he's a good piece. As popular as it is to have a stretch 4 right now, a guy that's 6'10" that can shoot 40% from range is a piece that a lot of teams could use.
Well, you can, but he's a liability on the defensive end.
Sure.
And when they tried to play Channing and Vooch together, it just didn't work. I think Channing knows that. That's why he came back in great shape to try to play better on the defensive end so he could impress Skiles. But I think the way Scott's going to play, I don't know if it's going to work in Channing's favor. And I think if they can get a deal for him, I think they'll probably take it.
So let's talk about the performances of some of these top players for the Magic this week. Victor Oladipo, you mentioned, had some big shots against Oklahoma City, but really on the whole in the 3 games struggled from the field. Shooting only 33% from the field, only 25% from 3. Did have a triple-double against the Thunder, and so he's been playing well, getting on the boards, and he has 6 assists a game is also a nice stat. Your assessment of him so far?
Well, Kevin Durant said, I've said this before, and Kevin Durant added to it the other night, that Oladipo reminds him of Dwayne Wade. And he's not there yet. I mean, Dwayne Wade's going to the Hall of Fame, okay? But he has a lot of characteristics in his game that fit in with Dwayne Wade. Both came in kind of as point guards, and they're great guys at charging the basket, attacking the basket.
While not great
perimeter shooters. But terrific athletes. So Victor's work. The one thing about Victor, you don't have to worry about his work ethic. He will work on his shot, but some guys can be in the league forever and just not be great shooters. But you have to get to the free throw line for Victor Oladipo. If you don't have a jump shot, and this is what Dwayne Wade made a career of. You saw those commercials that Wade made when he was getting knocked down. He got knocked down at Marquette. He got knocked down at the Miami Heat. I mean, this guy lived on the floor.
Yeah.
But that's how he scored his points, and then eventually became a better shooter because everybody backed off him because you knew, here he comes. Here comes Dwayne Wade. He's driving to the hoop. So I think that's where Victor has to get. And and the other thing too, he's 6'3". Shooting guard, and that's it, kind of on the small side. The thing with Victor is, where's his ceiling? Is it right there? Is that where it's going to stay, or does he have more?
Right. So let's talk about a couple of team stats, and then we'll get into this week's games. Some things I want to throw at you here. The Magic have taken the 7th most threes in the NBA this season, but they're shooting it 8th worst at 29%. And we know this isn't a great perimeter shooting team, but they are taking quite a bit of threes. And I think when you have a lineup, like we talked about with Fournier at the 3 and Harris at the 4, when you go small, what you sacrifice in interior defense, maybe rebounding, you feel like you can make it up maybe by the jump shooting. So what do you think it is about this team? They're taking so many threes but not hitting them, and perhaps that's a big part of why they're 0-3, the Wizards game in particular.
Well, I mean, like an old coach said, when he got on a guy because he took a three, he comes in and says, "I was open," and the guy's like, "Yeah, of course you were open. You're open for a reason. They're letting you shoot." I'm sure Scott's not happy with that. Just an open three is not always a good shot when you don't have. They just don't have great shooters. Nick Vucevic, great shooter. Tobias Harris, improved, but Elfrid Payton, long way to go. Victor Oladipo, long way. And the game today is a lot of three-point shooting. And that's where Hezonja can kind of help these guys. And if Channing Frye was a little bit more athletic, he could help them. But, one of the other problems is when you're not a great perimeter shooting team and you don't get to the free throw line, I mean, that's really tough. So you better be making threes.
This was going to add another side about free throws. They're not getting to the line very often, and they have the sixth lowest free throw percentage in the league right now.
Yeah, and that drives coaches crazy.
Not getting there, when they do, not making them.
Yeah, and then that's going to be a battle. And I don't know how you fix that problem unless you change the roster.
Okay, so let's jump into this week's games. We have 4 games for the Magic this week, and maybe these games look a little different than they did to start the season when you consider how challenging the schedule is going to be at the beginning of the year. Tuesday night at New Orleans, the Pelicans 0-3. They've had a very rough start to the season. Granted, they've played the Warriors twice in those 3 losses.
That'll do it to you.
But injuries to Tyreek Evans, Omar Ashik, Norris Cole, Quincy Pondexter. Now Kendrick Perkins is out indefinitely, plus Drew Holiday is on a minutes restriction. So it seems like if you're going to get the Pelicans, this is a great opportunity for the Magic. The Pelicans, while they're hurting a little bit.
Well, I know one thing, that the fans in New Orleans wish that the NBA would realign to put them in the Eastern Conference, because in this Western Conference, they won 48 games last year, and they were 8th seed.
And arguably could have been a 3 seed.
48 wins in the East, and you might be the champion of your division. But, it's tough. It's really tough for New Orleans. But they have a terrific franchise player in Anthony Davis. This guy, he is the next, as they always say. Who's the next LeBron? He is the next face of the NBA because at 6'11", he can shoot the three. He can dunk. And by the way, he led the league in blocks the last couple seasons. That's the kind of guy the Magic used to have. But Anthony Davis is an even better player than Dwight Howard was.
Sure, especially.
So and New Orleans is kind of on the clock, because Anthony Davis, while he just signed a big mega contract, the biggest contract in the NBA, we all know that if you don't win, these guys all get together, they join forces, and the All-Stars congregate to try to win. So it'd be unfortunate, but they lost Chris Paul already a few years ago to the LA Clippers. So the Pelicans have a nice young team, but they have to get over the hump.
And we talked about just a minute ago how the Magic have not shot the ball well from 3. An opportunity, I think, here against New Orleans, looking at the problems they've had defending the perimeter. They've allowed 41% to their opponents shooting from 3, and wing players like C.J. McCollum and Steph Curry putting up huge numbers against the Pelicans in the first 3 games, getting it done from the perimeter. An opportunity perhaps for the Magic here.
Well, if you could make your threes,
if they can make
sure. But I think the biggest thing is you can't let the other guys beat you. Anthony Davis is going to get his. There's just no stopping this guy. I mean, Nick Vucevic or Tobias, whoever is, probably Tobias Harris, whoever gets the tap on the shoulder, you got Anthony Davis tonight. You're just not going to stop him. Okay, so you don't want the other guys to have big nights. You don't want that second guy to have 25 or 30. So that'll be job one. I mean, it's a winnable game, I think. I mean, if you had to play a Western contender, that's the one you'd want to pick. That's the week of the week. And speaking of Steph Curry, if you don't watch the NBA much and you have a chance to see Golden State, this Curry kid is just phenomenal. And you could relate to him because he's a little guy. He's like 6'2".
My size, maybe.
But he's the best shooter in the NBA. And if you thought that shooting was a lost art, you ought to see this kid. shoot the basketball. I mean, it's fun, and he was the MVP, of course.
You are a special player when you maybe haven't even hit your peak yet.
Oh, no.
And people are already comfortable saying he's the best shooter of all time in the league.
I think he makes a great case for it. I mean, shots anywhere. I mean, the other night he hit it like he was like 10 feet behind the 3-point line. Swish. I mean, nothing to it. Just a terrific and fun player to watch.
Yeah, well, he dominated New Orleans in 2 games last week, scoring 40 and then 53 in the second matchup. All right, so the Magic, after the Pelicans, will play Wednesday against the Houston Rockets, another team that is one of the best in the West and was in the Western Conference Finals a year ago, but also off to a slow start like the Pelicans. Houston, 0-3. Yeah. What is going on with the Rockets?
Wow.
They lost all 3 games by at least 20 points. And it's the first time in NBA history a team has started with 3 games losing by 20 or more.
Well, hearing what Kevin McHale says, first, it's always on the defensive end with these coaches. You know, if you're going bad, that's the number one killer. That's the culprit, is they're not playing great defense. And James Harden is not a great defender. I mean, he's one of the best scorers in the league. He's right there with Westbrook and Durant and Curry. But the other end of the floor, they're not great, but they have some guys, Rodney Brewer and some other guys who are pretty good defenders, and it's kind of puzzling. Now, they have that guy right there, Dwight Howard, who was the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, but Dwight has really been bothered by some injuries, and he's just not the same guy yet. So when I think when they get it rolling defensively, and Dwight kind of gets his legs, I think they're going to be okay, but you can't blink in the Western Conference, or they'll pass you by. They don't care. So I think eventually Kevin will get that turned around.
James Harden really struggling, shooting 22% from the field on the season, 3 of 32 from 3-point range.
You know what that is? That's the Kardashian X. That's what that is right curse. There. You date a Kardashian, your game goes right.
That's true. It seems to happen to pretty much everyone who has.
You know, Chris Humphries, he was a pretty good NBA player. He got married to the Kardashian, and now he's just recovering.
Yeah. So you think the Magic blew it Friday. The Rockets led the Heat by 21 in the third quarter and lost by 20.
Wow.
They outscored 65 to 26 in the second half. That's embarrassing. Yeah. The Rockets will actually play Oklahoma City Monday night before playing the Magic on Wednesday. Okay, so 2 more days down the road, the Magic turn around and come back home to play the Toronto Raptors, who are off to a hot start, 3-0, wins over fringe Eastern contenders, the Pacers, the Celtics, and the Bucks. But this Raptors team has really improved their depth, and I think the addition to DeMar Carroll is one that most people would see as a pretty big deal for this team.
You know, I'm not a great supporter of the Toronto Raptors. I don't think they're a great team, but they seem to have some nice pieces, and they all seem to work well together. I mean, there he is. Can't think of his name.
DeMar DeRozan.
DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like Victor Oladipo. This is the Canadian version of Victor. Doesn't have a high shooting percentage, but can score a bunch of points in a hurry.
Yeah.
So, you know, they have a lot of depth, and but they also lost Amir Johnson. He was a critical piece last year as a big. So I think if the Magic are winless, I think that's the game that they can get at home.
So they finish off the 4 games this week. Saturday at Philadelphia. You got to feel like, I mean, that's a must-win.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens in these 3 games, I mean, they could be 1-5, they could be 0-6, but a chance to turn it around with Philadelphia.
Well, I mean, they play them 4 times, and you have, this is an AAU team. Really is playing in the NBA. I mean, and they're, you know, they have Jahlil Okafor, a number 1 pick, and they just have a bunch of D-League guys because they're still trying to get back in the lottery.
But a team that came into the Amway Center and beat the Magic last year.
Beat the Magic the night that Jacques Vaughn changed his lineup. I'm going to make a bold move. I'm going to change this lineup. We're going to get this straightened out. And lose to the Sixers.
Yeah.
So these are the games you've got to get. I mean, the Magic are, if there's any teams the Magic are better than, this is one.
For sure.
They have a better roster than the Sixers.
Okay, so just a couple minutes left here. Let's breeze through. Let's talk about some things across the NBA, some things that we observed in the opening week. Detroit starts 3-0. Stan Van Gundy's team, the Pistons. Belief that the Pistons could contend for a playoff berth. It looks like a very, very real possibility.
Well, it's a great start, and it also shows that Stan Van Gundy, he's not only the coach, but he's the team president, and he approves all these moves. And last year, they basically cleaned house.
Yeah.
I mean, they got rid of Josh Smith and had to pay through the nose to get him off their team.
Yeah.
So, they gave Reggie Jackson, a point guard, used to play with the Thunder, a huge $80 million contract, and everybody that kind of like everybody rolled their eyes on that one. But
let Greg Monroe walk for nothing.
Let Greg Monroe go to Milwaukee. Milwaukee got a star free agent. So, but Stan is kind of shaping this team like the one he had in Orlando. Big guy, Andrew Drummond, shooters around him, and that's the way he wants to play. And so far, it's working, and they've done a really good job.
Wins over the Hawks, the Jazz, and the Bulls, so some quality wins there. The Knicks 2-1 with wins over the Bucks and the Wizards. Your thoughts on Carmelo Anthony and the Knicks?
Well, wow,
a pretty good start.
I mean, they won 17 games last year. They were embarrassing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was ridiculous. And of course, Anthony missed part of the season, but he's their horse, obviously. But they also got finally they got some NBA players.
Yeah.
Last year it was like the Sixers. They had a lot of D-League guys. They were just going through the motions, trying to get a high lottery pick.
Kyle O'Quinn playing.
Save your money. Kyle O'Quinn used to play with the Magic. Big guys. He's played well. Had a double-double. Great passer. Robin Lopez, kind of in the Joakim Noah mode, where a defensive guy, hustle, give you rebounds. So they are better. And I think they've showed. Now, Charles Barkley said they're going to be in the playoffs. I think that's a stretch. But Carmelo Anthony, if he stays healthy, I mean, they're going to win more than 17 games.
Minnesota Timberwolves off to a pretty good start too. Granted, they played the Lakers and the Nuggets 2-0, but Rubio has played well in these first two games.
Great.
And Karl Anthony Towns has looked like the real number one pick for a reason here so far.
Well, if you're a Magic fan, this is the team that you're envious of, because they not only got Karl Anthony Towns, the number one pick, they got Andrew Wiggins in the trade for Kevin Love.
Yeah.
So they got two young franchise cornerstones.
Right.
And this has been the Magic's MO for years, Shaq, Penny, Dwight. Give me these cornerstone kids. So they're going to be a team. There's another team that wishes they were in the East. But in the coming years, they're going to be a nice team to watch.
Karl Anthony Towns, 21 points per game, 13 rebounds per game.
Rookie of the year.
And there's two wins. It looks that way. Yeah. Even though Okafor had a nice game to open, 26-7 against Boston, but a fairly rough game in the follow-up there. So looking at these rookies, Karl Anthony Towns, Okafor, Moutier has had a decent game or two, despite his 11 turnovers in the opener. 17 rookies right now averaging more minutes than Hezonja after week one.
Yeah, but that's not surprising. I mean, these guys all played in college, and they've been through all the AAU camps and everything. So they have a taste of that elite level of talent. They know what they're going against. This kid is still pretty raw. He's a better shooter than any of them, and any of these rookies. This is the best shooter in the draft class, is Mario Hezonja.
Frank Kaminsky's a pretty good shooter.
Pretty good
He's
shooter.
Playing less minutes than Hezonja.
But this kid, I mean, he can hit the three ball and he can go on the perimeter and hit shots. It's just the other parts of his game. They need to come together, and they're going to take time. It's just going to take time. He needs to build his body. Again, the J.J. Redick reference, I think, is apropos for him.
So let's close this. We talked about Steph Curry, some players that have been off to a hot start. I wanted to get your thoughts, since this is our first week with you on the show. We had Josh last week. MVP prediction, is it Steph Curry again? Or is it maybe...
After 3 games, you want me to call it
well,
Curry?
I wanted you to call it before the season.
You know what it's like. It's always tough to defend the championship. Yeah. But, wow, it's hard to pick against this kid. Now, I still think LeBron's going to have a say. You remember LeBron James, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of people think Anthony Davis was going to come into the discussion.
I think you have to win a lot of games to be MVP these days. I just don't think sheer numbers and promise is going to get you MVP votes. I think it's going to come down to the same usual suspects. I think it's going to be Curry, Harden, Durant, Westbrook. Hey, if Westbrook's the MVP, I wouldn't have any problem with that. I mean, he's a terrific player. So it won't be Kobe Bryant, no matter how many shots he takes. It's just not going to be. But I think it's going to be those same guys. And it was a fun race last year. I think it's going to be fun again.
Off the wall pick here, Josh and I last week were talking about most improved player candidates. Talking about Rudy Gobert and C.J. McCollum, and both of those players have been great. Yes. McCollum, in fact, had 37 points, a career high. He's averaging 23 points a game in 3 games for the Blazers. Most improved player prediction? You like those two?
Those are good picks. Those are good picks. The thing with most improved player, you really have to had a bad year.
Come out of nowhere.
Or injured.
Yeah,
so I think it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of a vote of, but again, winning team. If you're on a winning team, I think you're in line for all these awards. They really address winning, and we've seen in the All-Star voting, especially with Nick Vucevic last year. Great year, but losing team, and he just could not mount enough interest. And you're not on TV too, you don't have much exposure, but he was on the cusp. But Nick's not going to make the All-Star team unless they start winning games.
All right, so I didn't warn Brian here, put him on the spot with 2 more predictions.
Let's go.
All right. Your Eastern Conference champion, your Western Conference champion, and who's going to win it?
Well, I think we're going to have a rematch. I think it's going to be Cleveland, Golden State again.
Okay.
And I think this time Cleveland's going to get them if they're healthy.
Okay.
I do agree with Doc Rivers. I think there was some luck to go with Golden State's championship. I think they had the rabbit's foot going because they went into the finals and all they had was LeBron. Kyrie Irving played 1 game. Kevin Love didn't play in the series at all. So I think the rematch. I think LeBron gets another title.
So the over/under.
How's that?
That's good. I like it. The over/under on the Magic wins total was 32.5. You have the over.
I'm on record in the paper already. I said 33.
30. Okay, so very slightly.
So
over.
I'm right there with Vegas, I guess. 33. That's 8 more wins, and that's a pretty decent upgrade for one season. It's hard to go 15, 20 wins, from the last season to the next. It's very difficult. So you're housing camper on 33 wins.
All right, last prediction. 4 games this week. How do they come out?
Oh, I think they come back 0 for.
0 for?
Yes, unfortunately, they come back 0 for.
Even the Sixers?
Oh, not the Sixers. No. I thought you were talking about the road trip.
2 games on the road. No,
all
all
road
4
trip.
games this week. All 4 games this week.
Well, if they lose the Sixers, they ought to have refunds. Seriously.
So 1 and 3 for this week?
Yeah,
right,
I think that's part.
Brian predicts the Magic will struggle again, but get back on track against the Philadelphia 76ers this upcoming weekend. Thanks so much for checking out Orlando Magic Now. Did you enjoy your first time here?
I did. It's a little chilly in here. You can hang meat, but
it is freezing in the
okay.
studio. So we'll be back next week, each and every Monday, usually at 2:30, today at 3:30, but we'll be back next Monday with Orlando Magic Now at 2:30. Thanks for watching.